Hello, and thank you for joining the July Economic Development and Industrial Corporation of Boston board meeting. At this time, Boston Planning and Development Agency is continuing to host public meetings in a virtual setting for the health, safety, and accessibility of Boston residents. For more information and updates, visit bostonplans.org. The Open Public Meeting Law requires that I notify the public that this meeting is being recorded. Please be aware that an audio and visual recording of this meeting is being made and broadcast by Boston City TV, which is a part of the City of Boston Office of Cable Communications, at Xfinity Channel 24, RCN Channel 13, and Verizon Fios Channel 962. It is also being live streamed at boston.gov/cable. To begin the meeting, I will take a roll call of the members. Mr. Monahan? Dr. Landsmark?
Present.
Mr. Miller?
Present.
Okay, and I, Priscilla Rojas, am present. Okay, so let's start with agenda item number 1, request authorization for the approval of the minutes of June 16th, 2022 meeting. A motion is in order.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call for a vote. Mr. Monahan?
Aye.
Dr. Landsmark?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Motion passes. Item number 2, request authorization to adopt and implement a real estate decarbonization strategy for the purposes of decarbonizing the Bpda's real estate portfolio. Bex.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Madam Secretary, and members of the board for the opportunity to present to you today. My name is Bex Braun, and I'm a special advisor at the Bpda reporting to Devin Quirk. On behalf of a large team who contributed to this, I am requesting authorization to approve a Bpda real estate decarbonization strategy for the purpose of setting aspirational goals to decarbonize the Bpda's real estate portfolio. We began this effort with the recognition that climate change is a global problem, but with local effects. Residents of Boston are already experiencing changing seasonal patterns, including extreme temperatures, sea level rise, extreme precipitation, and coastal storms. These create hazards like flooding and extreme heat, with meaningful impacts to city residents. Those impacts include critical infrastructure disruption, property losses, and even personal harm. Those harms are not shared equally, with vulnerable groups, including communities of color and low-income neighborhoods, often disproportionately impacted. The Bpda believes that it has a responsibility to reduce the negative and inequitable impacts of energy consumption, and its real estate portfolio creates an opportunity to support the city's carbon reduction goals and to advance economic development. Embracing these responsibilities and opportunities, we are setting a goal. The Bpda will embark immediately on a path to achieve zero net carbon emissions as soon as possible for its real estate portfolio. To do so, the Bpda will take urgent action through 4 initiatives aligned to 4 property types, which each require different, thoughtful approaches. Across these property types and initiatives, we're strongly focused on commercial buildings rather than residential ones. The 4 initiatives are, first, for existing buildings that the Bpda owns and manages, we will immediately begin planning and implementing operational and capital improvements to achieve zero net carbon for each building this decade. This is our top priority. For existing buildings on land that Bpda ground leases, we will immediately begin tenant engagement and education and complementary tactics in coordination with the city's ordinance, Bpda 2.0, to achieve significant progress towards a fully net zero carbon ground lease portfolio by 2030 and full carbon neutrality by 2040. Third, for new buildings, we will expand our current high-performance green building standards to include zero net carbon goals in relevant disposition RFPs and lease negotiations so that new buildings over 20,000 square feet will be immediately carbon neutral. In the rare case where a building is developed but is not carbon neutral, it will have a clear path to decarbonization. And fourth, for other parcels in the Bpda's portfolio, we will identify creative options to offset operational carbon emissions elsewhere to contribute to a net zero carbon portfolio and advance related priorities, including environmental justice. Across all 4 initiatives, the real estate team will monitor and report on anticipated results, and we will engage with other impacted BPDA departments to reflect this priority and any process changes required. Recognizing the rapid advances in technology and practices, this policy will remain a working document. We've already begun tenant engagement on this topic and have received feedback. We're working to incorporate these comments and will continue to welcome feedback through our forthcoming website and comment form, even as we begin the hard work of moving towards this goal. Today, we are requesting authorization to adopt and implement the real estate decarbonization strategy. If there are any questions, I am happy to answer them at this time.
Thank you, Bex. Do we have any questions or comments from the board?
I have a question, Madam Chair. With this, so we own the buildings. Is there any responsibility to the tenant?
Yes, so one of the things that is important to us is that we are not displacing tenants as part of this strategy. So we will be working closely with our suite lease tenants to understand what their goals and priorities and needs are. And we have already begun that process.
Okay, I should have maybe said it differently. Is there any cost to the tenants?
It is possible, but we will be working with them to figure out the financials of this. We are expecting that we will spend money to do this as it is our buildings. And maybe Dennis would like to speak to this as well.
Thank you, Bex. Ms. Monahan, we're viewing this very much as a blank slate with all options on the table for us. Currently, I'm talking to two different tenants at 12 Channel Street who are very interested in replacing the windows. The windows in that building are literally, circa 1945. And we're talking in the context of this policy on how we can share the costs with them and help them help us and help us help them as well. So it's a work in progress, but we do not expect the tenants to absorb all these costs because that's not temporary.
Certainly with their rents, that would be a problem. Say, we're paying X amount, now you expect us to, as you know, this is expensive stuff too.
Indeed, we're very aware of that, and it's we're looking at it as an opportunity to see how creative we can get with all of our tenants to reach these mutual goals. And there will be a financial contribution on our part, most likely specifically in the suites in the form of rent reduction.
Thank you.
This is a major step for the city and for this agency to be taking. And I'm wondering if you could elaborate on what kind of public engagement process we may embark on to let folks know exactly what it is that is under this policy.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Landsmark. We have already begun engagement by sharing this document with all of our tenants, both suite and ground leases, and shared a short survey with them to better understand what their sustainability goals and how we can help. That is sort of the first step. Moving forward, the leasing team will continue to have more one-on-one conversations to do this type of collaboration. But because this primarily affects a specific set of people, specifically our tenants, as opposed to all community members, that's where we've really focused our efforts to date.
Okay, thank you.
Any additional questions or comments from the board? Hearing and seeing none, a motion is in order.
So moved.
Second.
We'll call for a vote. Mr. Monahan?
Aye.
Dr. Landsmark?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Motion passes. Thank you. Okay. Item number 3, personnel. Michael?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, and members of the board, Madam Secretary and Director Jemison. I apologize for my light. I have to get a better light in the office. We have a number of items for your consideration on the EDIC agenda. We have 5 appointments with details in the board memos. Caleb Plummer, contract specialist in the Budget and Finance Department, effective July 18th, 2022. Julie Webb, GIS SQL Applications Developer in the MIS Department, effective August 1st, 2022. Patrick Ford, Community Engagement Manager in the DEI Department, effective August. Riley Moran, Project Engineer, Environmental Engineer in the Real Estate Department, effective August 1st, 2022. Aaron Skibbins, Project Assistant in the Development Review Department, effective August 8th, 2022. We have one employment service contract with the details listed in the board memos. Diana Fernandez in the Urban Design Department. We have 19 status changes. Also, the details are listed in the board memos. And we have 7 travel requests with details also listed in the board memos for Executive Director Power in the Office of Workforce Development, Jonathan Power Boston in the Office of Workforce Development, Joseph Pellegrino, Program Director, Power Corp Boston in the Office of Workforce Development, Mujihad Muhammad, Project Manager, Power Corp Boston in the Office of Workforce Development, Richard Sheriff, Crew Leader, Power Corp Boston in the Office of Workforce Development, Michael Andelman, Program Manager, Bank on Boston in the Office of Workforce Development, and Eve Churchinetz, Program Manager, Bank on Boston in the Office of Workforce Development. And finally, we have 4 departures with the details listed in the board memo. Barry Reeves, Director of DEI in the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Department. Joseph Christo, Senior, Resilience and Waterfront Planner in the Planning Department. Lydia Sarufis, Senior Manager in the Office of Workforce Development. And Tracy Phils-Aim, Assistant Deputy Director of Programming in the Office of Workforce Development. And that is all.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from the board? Hearing and seeing none, a motion is in order.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call for a vote. Mr. Monahan?
Aye.
Dr. Lansmore?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Motion passes. Thank you. Right, so that is it for our EDIC agenda. I need a motion to adjourn this meeting.
I move that we adjourn this meeting.
Second.
Roll call for a vote. Mr. Monahan?
Aye.
Dr. Lansmore?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Motion passes. Meeting adjourned. So we'll now begin the PDA portion of this meeting. Thank you for joining the July Boston Redevelopment Authority Board meeting. At this time, the Boston Planning and Development Agency is continuing to host public meetings in a virtual setting for the health, safety, and accessibility of Boston residents. For more information and updates, visit bostonplans.org. The Open Public Meeting Law requires that I notify the public that this meeting is being recorded. Please be aware that an audio and visual recording of this meeting is being made and broadcast by Boston City TV, which is a part of the City of Boston Office of Cable Communications, at Xfinity Channel 24, RCN Channel 13, and Verizon Fios Channel 962. It is also being live streamed at boston.gov/cable. So I will now take a roll to begin this meeting. Mr. Monahan.
Present.
Dr. Lansmore.
Present.
Mr. Miller.
Present.
And the chair is present. Okay, item number 1 has been removed from the agenda. Item number 2, request authorization to schedule a public hearing on August 11th, 2022 at 5:30 p.m. or at such a time and date deemed appropriate by the director to consider the 125 Lincoln Street project as a development impact project. There's no presentation, so a motion is in order.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call for a vote. Mr. Monahan?
Aye.
Dr. Lansmore?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Motion passes. Item number 3, request authorization to schedule a public hearing on August 11th, 2022 at 5:40 p.m. or at such a time and date deemed appropriate by the director to consider the 24 Dry Dock Avenue project as a development impact project. A motion is in order.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call for a vote. Mr. Monahan?
Aye.
Dr. Lansmore?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye, motion passes. Item number 4, request authorization to schedule a public hearing on August 11, 2022 at 5:50 p.m. or at such a time and date deemed appropriate by the director to approve the third amendment to second amended and restated development plan for 49, 51, and 63 Melcher Street within master planned development area number 69 South Boston, the 100 acres. Motion is in order.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call for a vote. Mr. Monahan?
Aye.
Dr. Landsmark?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye, motion passes. Item number 5, Board of Appeal. Jeff?
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board, Madam Secretary, Director Jameson. 54 petitions have been prepared by planning staff for transmittal to the Board of Appeal for 3 hearings on July 21st, 26th, and August 9th. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Do we have any questions or comments from the board? Hearing and seeing none, a motion is in order.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call for a vote. Mr. Monahan?
Aye.
Dr. Landsmark?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye, motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item number 6, request authorization to adopt and implement a real estate decarbonization strategy for the purposes of decarbonizing the Bpda's real estate portfolio. Bex?
Thank you, Madam Chair, Madam Secretary, and members of the board for the opportunity to bring this project before you again. To follow up on the earlier vote on the EDIC portion of the agenda, we are requesting authorization to adopt and implement the real estate decarbonization strategy. The details are the same as those presented earlier, but I'm happy to provide any additional information or details that may be helpful at this time. Thank you once again for your consideration.
Thank you. Do we have any questions or comments from the board? Hearing and seeing none, a motion is in order.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call for a vote. Mr. Monahan?
Aye.
Dr. Landsmark?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye, motion passes. Thank you. Item number 7, request authorization to enter into a license agreement with the Chinese Historical Society of New England Incorporated to install the temporary Endurance Street Resilience and Response in Boston's Chinese community, a public-facing bilingual exhibition on street-level windows at the China Trade Building located at 2 Boylston Street. Lauren?
Madam Chairwoman, members of the board, the China Trade Building was constructed in 1887 and is a designated Boston landmark listed on the National Register of Historic Places. Since the 1990s, several not-for-profit agencies based in Chinatown have called the China Trade Center home. These agencies provide welcome cultural and historical resources to the community. Additionally, the Chinatown branch of the Boston Public Library is also hosted within the China Trade Building. The Chinese Historical Society of New England is the first educational organization dedicated solely to documenting, preserving, and promoting the history and legacy of Chinese immigration in New England. In collaboration with the Tisch Public Humanities Program at Tufts University, and inspired by the economic distress and racially motivated attacks that have impacted Boston's Chinese-speaking neighborhood during the pandemic, CSNE proposes to present Endurance Street, Resilience and Response in Boston's Chinese Community. It's a public-facing bilingual exhibition consisting of 12 banners installed on windows at the street level of China Trade. Written material displayed on the banners is drawn from the collection of the late activist and scholar Cnylc, whose archive was bequeathed to the Historical Society. Endurance Street will be available for public enjoyment from August 5th, 2022 through November 15th, 2022. There's no fee for this project, and the installation should begin on August 1st. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any questions or comments from the board? Hearing and seeing none, a motion is in order.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call for a vote. Mr. Monahan?
Aye.
Dr. Landsmark?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye, motion passes. Thank you, Lauren.
Thank you.
Item number 8, request authorization to advertise and issue a request for proposals for consultant services for the Fenway Kenmore Transportation Action Plan. Nick?
Thank you, and good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the board, Madam Secretary, and Director Jemison. Can everyone hear me okay? I'm assuming I'm coming in fine. So my name is Nick Schmidt. I'm a senior transportation planner here in the BPDA's Transportation and Infrastructure Planning Department. I'm here today to request authorization for the Secretary to advertise and issue a request for proposals to engage a consultant to assist in the preparation of the Fenway Kenmore Transportation Action Plan. So I'll just call it the action plan just to shorten it. That's a lot to say from here on out. Next slide, please. The action plan is a continuation of prior and ongoing planning and design processes for the Fenway Kenmore neighborhood, which began more than 20 years ago. In 2004, the new zoning was adopted, and in 2009, the Fenway Longwood Kenmore Transportation Action Plan was published. Together, these initiatives encouraged mixed-use development and initiated multimodal transportation projects that have since been completed or are continuing to proceed through the design process for implementation. Today, over 9 million square feet of development projects are under construction or proposed within or adjacent to the neighborhood, and additional city and state plans and projects are underway. A new transportation planning and design initiative in the Fenway neighborhood is needed to respond to this new context. Guided by Go Boston 2030, the action plan will address 4 primary tasks: planning, analysis, design, and engagement. And I'll cover each of these tasks in later slides. But first, I'd like to define the study area. Next slide, please. Generally, the study area is bounded by Charles River to the north, Mass Ave to the east, Fenway and Ruggles Street to the south, and St. Mary's Street to the west. Brookline Avenue and Ruggles Street extend beyond the core of the study area, given anticipated increases in high-frequency bus service and planned pathway connectivity to the Southwest Corridor, respectively. Next slide, please. Consulting services and expertise will be needed to support the BPDA across 4 major tasks, which will include planning, analysis, design, and engagement. The delivered action plan will be used by the BPDA and its partner agencies, departments, to guide the review of the development proposals in the neighborhood, inform development mitigation, influence city capital budget decisions, and advocate for infrastructure investments by state partners. Task 1 will focus on the planning of safe and complete connected networks to inform all analysis and design within the action plan. This includes developing a full network vision that establishes multimodal priorities by corridor, defining a full bike network, and preparing a curbside management framework. Task 2 will focus on analyzing streets and transit services through the development of a holistic study area model. This model will align with Go Boston 2030 to support the network vision established in Task 1 and understand implications to the multimodal transportation network of any proposed change throughout this planning process. Next slide, please. Informed by the network planning in Task 1 and in concert with the analysis in Task 2, Task 3 will focus on designing streets, intersections, and the public realm. This task will focus on Kenmore Square, Brookline Avenue, and the Ipswich Street, Van Ness Street corridor. The BPDA will work closely with the Boston Transportation Department, Boston Public Works Department to ensure adherence to city design standards and project development standards. And Task 4 will focus on engaging the Fenway community and its stakeholders. The BPDA will work with the selected consultant to identify and execute a community and stakeholder engagement process throughout the duration of the action plan. We expect to return to you later this summer for authorization to enter into a contract with the most qualified consultant resulting from the RFP process. And this concludes the presentation related to this agenda item, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any questions or comments from the board?
I have one question. I note that Northeastern University, where I am employed, is not a part of this plan, although it appears that a portion of the Ruggles Station is. So in what plan would Northeastern be included?
Thank you, Dr. Lansmark. That's a great question. The intent of our study area is to really focus on sort of the core of the Fenway area, essentially north of the Fens. However, the actual analysis study area will extend a little bit beyond that to assure that we're accounting for projects and plans that connect to and really relate to that core area. So I think to directly answer your question, in the near term, I think the IMP process would be what would be the kind of planning initiative that would cover that. But as it relates to, this planning initiative, we're more focused specifically on the kind of area north of the fence, and especially how new bus service being planned through the bus network redesign is going to relate to street design and space allocation along Brookline Avenue and Kenmore Square.
So the university portion of this would then be picked up in a Nubian Square plan or a Roxbury plan?
I think that, yeah, I think that, I don't know if Kenan or someone has a more broad answer to that question specifically. I just know that that specific geography is not related to this project in a sense that we are focusing on design for those areas north of the fence. Primarily, again, related to the new kind of development that's already sort of we're seeing in process, both the permitting process and the construction process, as well as bus network changes that we're observing through the bus network redesign process. Through the campus itself, I don't think we anticipate, aside from those corridors that are sort of selected, that kind of wrap around, like the Ruggles Street corridor, we're not anticipating new kind of changes to bus service in those specific areas.
And in another portion of the plan is the planning that's going on in the Charles Gate area also included within this?
Yes, that's a great question. So it is. It will be related to this. So where we see that being plugged into would be primarily in our second task, which is the development of that holistic multimodal network model. The model itself is going to be able to, at least as we envision it, we'll be able to test any kind of changes that are being proposed through this planning initiative. But that will also include future, kind of anticipated changes from parallel and complementary, city and state planning processes, including all the stuff that's happening or envisioned to be happening along the Charles Gate area, including the park reconfiguration. And there are 2 MassDOT projects that are already programmed, including kind of reconfiguration of the ramps at Storrow Drive, as well as the overpass over the Turnpike. So we do anticipate folding those into our kind of future conditions of our model, which will help us, figure out any of those kind of big picture network changes, how that fits in with anything that we're talking about within the kind of core study area, as we're calling it.
Thank you.
Of course.
Thank you. Any additional questions or comments from the board? Hearing and seeing none, a motion is in order.
So moved.
Second.
We'll call for a vote. Mr. Monahan?
Aye.
Dr. Lansmore?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Motion passes. Thank you, Nick.
Thank you.
All right, item number 9. Request authorization to advertise and issue a request for proposals for design and engineering services for the Resilient Fort Point Channel Infrastructure Project. Chris.
Great, thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board, Secretary Polhemus, and Director Jemison. I'm Chris Bush, Assistant Deputy Director for Climate Change and Environmental Planning. In January of 2019, the Bpda and the City of Boston's Environment Department, in collaboration with the Massachusetts Environmental Management Agency, submitted a proposal to the Federal Emergency Management Agency's pre-disaster mitigation grant program for funding of up to $10 million for the Resilient Fort Point Channel Infrastructure Project. This grant program helps municipalities implement hazard mitigation projects to enhance resilience. In June of 2019, FEMA identified this project for further review, and we recently completed a National Environmental Policy Act and Massachusetts Environmental Policy Act environmental review. Now the next step is to begin design and engineering of this project. Next slide, please. This project builds off of the climate vulnerability analysis and resilience strategies that were developed through Climate Ready Boston, as well as the Coastal Resilience Solutions for South Boston report. The goal of this project is to address critical current and future coastal flood pathways along the eastern shoreline of Fort Point Channel, represented in the area in red there on the graphic. Next slide, please. Flooding will be prevented through the construction of approximately 2,300 linear feet of mixed berm and flood wall mitigation features. Next slide, please. And we have a rendering here of what this berm system along the channel could potentially look like, and the design and engineering work will build upon this rendering and vision. The overall project budget is $20,500,000. $10 million of that will be covered by the PDM grant, and another $10.5 million matching funds coming from the City of Boston capital budget. The consultant services aims to complete the design and engineering services for this. Total cost of design and engineering services phase of the project is estimated to be $2 million, which is a not to exceed amount which will be framed within the RFP. Once design and engineering services are complete, we'll be back before the board requesting authorization for issuance of an RFP for construction services. Happy to answer any questions.
Okay, do we have any questions or comments from the board?
Could you just describe very briefly what the impacts of this project will be on current flood projections and along Dorchester Avenue and in as far as Mass and Cass and that area?
Yeah, this project will extend down just beyond the Gillette property. There needs to be further work done at the sort of far southern extent and end of Fort Point Channel to limit flood waters from getting down into the Dorchester Avenue alignment and into Roxbury. I believe the anticipated activation of that flood pathway, if you will be around 2060, 2070, so we have a little more time to address that area around Cabot Yards and the southern extent of the channel. This reach of Fort Point Channel that's protected now is a current flood pathway, so if you look at the existing FEMA flood maps, this is a flood zone, and as soon as 2030, when we're anticipating around 9 inches of sea level rise, these flood pathways would be activated, potentially flooding areas of the A Street alignment, Fort Point Channel Arts District, even out towards the convention center. So, and following with the climate ready strategy, we're really looking to focus resources on these flood pathways that are present as soon as 2030. We've got a little more time to get to those other areas further down and south of the channel.
So at least at this moment, it's not anticipated that this work will simply funnel water further into town.
No, the intent of this project is it to be, I guess the term is independently effective. So that's actually a FEMA requirement. So this berm system, as well as a series of deployables in this area, will prevent flood waters from getting into the specific flood zone. There's what we would term fringe flooding just further to the north and south through mid-century in this area. So this would not displace flood waters into those adjacent zones.
Thank you.
Just for, I've recently become aware of this new, all of this new vocabulary. Can you just double click a little bit into the use of berm and wall and kind of how all of that is intended to work together?
Yeah. Well, the intent through Climate Ready is to have a system of sort of elevated, sort of green or soft measures, if you will, along much of the city's waterfront. The intent with the whole coastal resilient solutions and the sort of harbor vision for Boston is to expand green, open space, living shorelines. And so these elevated vegetated berm systems are where we have enough real estate, really the preferred option. We could end up in some situations, such along, say, Seaport Boulevard on the South Boston waterfront, where the boulevard is right up against the harbor walk and the seawall, where we may need to look at different types of features and measures there, like we have with the recently completed Langone and Popolo Park, where the design was very creative in utilizing sort of elevated seating systems close to the harbor walk to serve as a flood wall, which is really also integrated to these public amenities and seating areas as well. So going to take a lot of creative design. Again, the intent is to have sort of green soft solutions prioritized and put those in where we can. In some instances where we have really limited real estate along the waterfront, we may need to go with more sort of structural wall elements. Does that respond adequately to the question?
Yes.
Okay.
Additional questions or comments from the board?
Madam Chair, I have a quick question. Chris, is this on like a daily situation or in those special events?
Well, the elevation we're looking to get to here would protect the area from what's termed a 1% chance storm event with 40 inches of sea level rise, and we are anticipating that 40 inches of sea level rise out around 2070. We really are looking to have potential flooding from just regular monthly tidal flooding by mid-century or 2040. So this system and the elevation it is at would protect against the sort of blue sky, high tide flooding we can get once a month, as well as that larger storm event like the ones we had in early 2018 to keep floodwaters out of this area.
In this particular case, has a lock system ever been looked at where?
There's been some discussion of that was actually looked at as part of the 2018 South Boston report, potentially a lock system down at the end of the 4-point channel. However, that system would have to be maintained as open much of the time. So over time, your regular high tide flooding that we could be seeing multiple times a month, those types of lock systems are not designed to be closing and functioning that frequently. There's also, this issue of redundancy that we really need to have these shoreline systems in place as well. So would we want to be spending money on a lock system and elevated shoreline, or just have an elevated shoreline that functions at that flood level we need to address for future events? It's not to say that, as the types of technologies that are out there for these floodgates could improve over time, but the analysis that was done did not determine it was the recommended measure to follow right now.
Understood. Thank you.
Yep. Additional questions or comments?
Yeah, I have one. Chris, is dredging the channel, does that offer any potential relief as well?
In these areas of the harbor, I don't think so. If we have a more constrained waterway like a river, that could allow for additional capacity. But when we're dealing with the ocean, which has sort of infinite capacity, when you have something like a storm surge, dredging is not going to provide or avail that much of relief in terms of that sort of surge elevation that's coming into this area and the potential to spill and push floodwaters into landside areas.
I see. Thank you.
Right, I think we've all asked our questions here.
Good questions, yeah.
Definitely, it's on all of our minds, right? So I believe a motion is in order here.
So moved.
Seconded.
Roll call for a vote. Mr. Monahan?
Aye.
Dr. Lansmer?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Good luck. Okay, item number 10, request authorization to execute a contract amendment with Interboro Partners LLC for the planned Charlestown contract in an amount not to exceed $47,387. Kenneth.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the board, Director Jemison, Secretary Polhemus. As Chair Rojas has just mentioned, I'm here seeking a first contract amendment for the planned Charlestown consultant services. On November 21st, 2021, the Bpda executed a contract with Interboro Partners in an amount not to exceed $189,550. Plan Charlestown, the plan they were selected for, will ultimately result in a planning document that guides the evolution of the Charlestown neighborhood and will include zoning recommendations, guidance for reviewing development proposals, and a list of direct public and private investments to improve the neighborhood's built environment. The scope of services for the plan roughly includes an urban design component, mobility component, a financial analysis component, and a diversity, equity, and inclusion component. I'm happy to go into the detail of those if needed. Since the contract commenced on November 21st, Interboro has completed 25% of their urban design work, delivering draft historic design guidelines, and 6% of their mobility capacity analysis. The bulk of the planning work completed to date, including neighborhood visioning, public meetings and engagements, of which included roughly 12 public meetings and 4 advisory group meetings, and planning multiple potential future scenarios, has remained in-house with the BPDA planning team. Planning division staff intends to hand off the remaining work to the Interboro team in September 2022. We're here seeking this amendment because due to budget constraints allocated to the planned Charlestown project, we'd always intended to do the first component of this work in-house and hand it off to Interboro consultants. Recent planning division staff turnover and delays in the Boston Transportation Department's Rutherford Ave corridor redesign process has delayed this handoff of our work to Interboro by approximately 6 months. To avert further delay and mitigate short-term planning division staffing challenges, BPDA staff recommends expanding the scope of work listed under the urban design, mobility, and diversity, equity, inclusion tasks of the consultant contract. This will facilitate an early transfer of the work to Interboro so that the Interboro team can evolve the planning scenario work based on public feedback and aid in preparation for the public presentations of the scenario content earlier than originally intended. As of July 14th, 2022, $165,000 remains in the contract. We're seeking a contract increase of $47,387 towards these tasks. Please let me know if you have any questions. All of this money would be funded through the planning division budget. Happy to answer questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from the board? Okay, hearing and seeing none, a motion is in order.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call for a vote. Mr. Monahan?
Aye.
Julianne Smart?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Motion passes. Thank you. Okay, item number 11. Request authorization to correct a Scrivener's error, ratify and confirm the tentative designation status of Powerhouse CNY as redeveloper, and to extend the tentative designation status of said redeveloper to facilitate the long-term lease of the BPDA-owned Building 108 property in the Charlestown Navy Yard. Dennis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Scrivener's error, by the way, is basically a typo in the lease when the attorneys are writing it up. So that's being corrected in this bill, or asked to be corrected. Building 108 in Charlestown Navy Yard is a vacant 32,000 square foot structure formerly housing a power plant constructed by the United States Navy back in the 1930s. That building is currently scheduled for demolition and environmental remediation, which is scheduled for completion. It's targeted in the spring of 2023. My colleagues in Bpda Capital Construction are adeptly managing that project now. In 2019, Bpda issued a request for proposals for the redevelopment of Building 108. In February of 2021, after a lengthy community process, the Bpda board voted to award tentative designation to an entity then known as Powerhouse Partners LLC for the proposed development of a 67,000 square foot life science facility with targeted neighborhood names such as a small restaurant or a coffee shop. In January of 2022, the tentative designation was extended to July of 2022. This memorandum recognizes that Powerhouse Partners LLC legal entity name has changed to Powerhouse CNY LLC. I'll just say Powerhouse going forward. Since the initial designation, Powerhouse has made significant progress towards final designation, including finalizing the building design, which involved discussions and feedback with Bpda written design, but also National Parks and Mass General Hospital, which resulted in an actual agreed upon increase in the size of the building to 97,000 square feet. Collectively, they thought the mass was actually more appropriate. The bigger building was more appropriate than the smaller building in that case. They also continuously meet with potential investors. They filed an Article 80 letter of intent in March of 2022, and they've executed a financial term sheet with Boston Planning and Development Agency. Today, requesting votes two votes. One, to acknowledge the new legal name of the development entity to Powerhouse Cnylc LLC, and to extend the tentative designation to July 31st of 2023. During that year will allow Powerhouse to finalize terms and conditions of a long-term ground lease with Bpda, pursue commitments from equity investors, pursue construction and permanent financing, and as the date for delivery gets closer, they will start to try to finalize commitments from prospective tenants. It's a little too early in the game to lock up commitments for tenants. And they also intend to file all necessary Article 80 documents and file all necessary applications to the Massachusetts Historical Commission. With a favorable vote today, I anticipate returning to the board in July of 2023 with an impressive list of accomplishments. Thank you.
Okay. Great. Thank you. Any questions or comments from the board? Hearing and seeing none, a motion is in order.
So moved.
Roll call for a vote. Mr. Monahan?
Aye.
Dr. Landsmark?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 12, request authorization to extend the tentative designation of Madison Tropical LLC as the redeveloper of a portion of Parcel 10 of the Southwest Corridor Development Plan, known as Parcel B, and to extend the temporary license agreement for Tropical Food International Incorporated to continued use of Parcel 10B for parking. Dana.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board, Secretary Polhemus, and Director Jemison. I'm Dana Whiteside, Deputy Chief of Staff. We're pleased to share with you the request for this consideration for the extension of the tentative designation for Madison Tropical as developer of Parcel 10, with particular focus today on the accomplishments that the team has undertaken since the last extension. Of note, I'll provide a reminder that this body approved the notice of project change for the 2085 Washington Street component, which is the third and final phase of this development, which changed the project from a predominantly mixed-use development to a predominantly residential development with near 100% income-restricted housing units. Madison CDC has engaged Trinity Financial to create this new proposed development, which really right-sizes the project to fit within the district of Nubian Square. The primary considerations that the development team will undertake during the time of this extension are, number one, to complete its review with the Landmarks Commission, because this project exists within the use of street protection area, and then finally, the completion of the Zoning Board of Appeal approval process. The project has already had an advisory conversation with the Landmarks Commission and is well on the way to having that approval as part of that process. It is anticipated that within the next 3 months of this proposed designation, following that timeframe, we'll be looking to come back to you in collaboration with our real estate department to seek final designation for the project, thereby enabling us to move forward with the related lease considerations. I'll close my remarks there, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Okay. Any questions or comments from the board?
Just a comment that given rising interest rates, it would be highly desirable to move this as expeditiously as possible.
Very much so, Dr. Landmarks, I totally agree.
Thank you. Additional questions or comments? Hearing and seeing none, a motion is in order.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call for a vote. Mr. Monahan?
Aye.
Dr. Landsmark?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Item number 13, the certificate of completion. Okay. Request authorization to issue a certificate of completion in connection with the Master Cooperation Agreement and the individual project component cooperation agreements for the hub on Causeway located at 50 to 150 Causeway Street in the West End. A motion is in order.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Roll call for a vote. Mr. Monahan?
Aye.
Dr. Landsmark?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Motion passes. Item number 14, Request authorization to dispose of Unit 117 and Unit 1 within the Laconia 1180 through 200 Washington Street in the South End Urban Renewal Area, project number Mass R-56 at market rate. John.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Director Jameson, Madam Secretary, and members of the board. I'm here today to request authorization to discharge the Affordable Housing Covenant restrictions on Bpda Residential Unit 117 and Unit 119 at Laconia Lofts, to exercise any and all documents required to engage a real estate broker to advertise and assist in the sale of the units, and to execute a deed in any and all documents required to convey the units. The board originally voted to purchase these units at the board meeting on February 14th, 2019. Laconia Lofts is located in the South End Urban Renewal Area and was developed to be a condominium in 1998. In 1999, an artist purchased Unit 117 and Unit 119 as a combined unit for $155,570, which was market rate at the time. However, pursuant to the LDA, Unit 119 was intended to be an artist affordable unit, and pursuant to the master deed, Unit 117 was intended to also be an artist affordable unit. In 2019, the owner of the property wished to sell the units rapidly and priced the combined units at market rate. The Bpda was notified of the sale on January 16, 2019, and after negotiations with the mediator, the Bpda exercised its right of first refusal and purchased the combined units for $912,500 using inclusionary development policy funds in order to avoid tax foreclosure and loss of the affordability restrictions on the units. Originally, the plan of action for these units was to separate the two units and sell Unit 119 at market rate and Unit 117 as an affordable artist unit. While preparing for the disposition of these units from 2021 through 2022, the Bpda had conversations with the Mayor's Office of Housing and Mayor's Office of Arts and Culture. Additionally, we collected information and evaluated the options available for this disposition. The criteria created to determine the best disposition process to follow evaluated the potential options by their mission alignment, artist fit, feasibility, fiscal responsibility, and legality and risk. 5 options were originally identified and evaluated by this criteria. 3 of the 5 options were ruled out because they were not legally possible and or feasible. Of the last 2 options, one was to sell the units together at an affordable price. This option presented challenges because it would not meet the artist community's need for affordability due to the presence of a high homeowners association fee at Laconia Lofts. Additionally, the units would have to be sold at an extremely low price, which would result in a very high subsidy cost, which was estimated to be greater than $800,000 for a single affordable unit. The second option is to sell the combined units at market rate. This option presented challenges by being misaligned with the Bpda's mission, as it does not preserve the existing affordable artist units, and there are few opportunities to create similar units in the South End. The benefits, however, of this option is that it is the fastest speed to occupancy for the units, and the funds from the sale could potentially be used to replenish the inclusionary development policy funds or otherwise be used to support affordable artist housing. The combined units are estimated to possibly be sold for $1,500,000, which is over $600,000 higher than the price that the Bpda paid for the unit. The Bpda committee decided to recommend pursuing option 2, the sale of the combined units at market rate. While the committee recognizes the downside of this option, we believe that these funds have the potential to create a greater positive impact rather than a single affordable unit. The proceeds from the sale will be put directly into the IDP fund, which will flow into the Mayor's Office of Housing's housing development pipeline to subsidize artist housing. If an appropriate project is not identified, then the funds will instead be used for down payment assistance for artist home ownership. The Bpda staff recommends that the Bpda board authorize the director to discharge the affordable housing covenant restriction on the units, to execute any and all documents required to engage a real estate broker to advertise and assist and sell the units, and to execute a deed in any and all documents required to convey the units. With that being said, I am ready to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay. Questions or comments from the board?
Jonathan, when those units were purchased, I think you said it was $155,000 in 2019.
That is correct.
Was that for the 2 units?
Yes, that was for the 2 units combined.
Okay. Was there not a covenant to protect against resale or to keep that unit affordable?
So this unit together was one of the first units that was put together that actually had an LDA placed upon it. That while there was a covenant inside the LDA to protect Unit 119 and one inside the master deed to protect Unit 117, the timing that the BPDA found out that the unit was being sold did not leave the agency the opportunity to try to enforce the affordable covenants on that particular property. Additionally, during that particular time frame, that's where we ran into the potential loss of the affordability restriction due to the upcoming tax foreclosure on the property. So that's why things moved down that route of that right of first refusal in order to just have the opportunity to try to protect the affordability when we first purchased it back in 2019.
Thank you. I know the agency works so hard to create these affordable units. You hate to see something like that come off the rolls. Thank you.
No problem.
Yeah, just to pick up on that last point, I cannot remember any time when we've taken an affordable unit, particularly an affordable unit that is designated for artists, out of the rolls of affordable units and put them in the open market, which is what we're doing here. Could you just repeat what the amount of money is that will be gained from this transaction that's going to flow into our funds to make more affordable units for artists available?
So it's currently estimated that the property will be sold for $1.5 million, which is an increase of $600,000 from the original purchase price that we made back in 2019. But again, the whole goal is that these funds will be put into the pipeline to develop additional affordable units for artists, mainly through the Mayor's Office of Housing, or to provide some down payment assistance to address these issues. I think like overall the cost outweighs the potential to develop more units for artists rather than only keeping one unit in its current position. That's why our current committee led ourselves in this direction to collect those funds to do more for the community.
And how soon do you think that determination will be made?
So we are currently, as soon as the property is sold, we already have a real estate developer that we will most likely be working with. It is expected that it will only take a matter of 2 or 3 months in order to have the property be put up for to be sold. And at that particular point in time, the money will be put directly into those the IDP funds. And at that particular point in time, it really comes down to the pipeline of properties that the Mayor's Office of Housing has ongoing. And if there is no properties that are available at that particular point in time, we will definitely make that transition to look for other opportunities to provide those funds to assist for down payment assistance at that point. So that's the time frame that we currently have, but these are just estimates at this point.
Well, I think you can sense from the board that there's little discomfort with this transaction, but we understand how and why it needs to be done. So, let's make some lemonade here and get these funds back in circulation so that they benefit artists.
Yeah, here, just to piggyback off of that, it's clear to me what limited options that we have at this point. It's not clear to me on why we're here, right? So what is the actual root cause of the issue? I understand that we got notified, right, very late in in the game here, and we had limited options. But what from a process perspective, from a what can we do to make sure that this doesn't happen again in the future, in the form of preventative? I mean, our preventative control really is there, right, with the agreement, and it wasn't adhered to. And that is very concerning for me from a process perspective. So, what else can we do to prevent this from happening, or to detect it earlier on? And has the agency considered any penalties or any other ramifications of why we got here, how we got here in the first place, with whoever are the parties that did not adhere to the original agreement?
I can jump in there very quickly. So as Jonathan had mentioned, this was one of our earliest LDAs, and so admittedly there were some holes in the ability to enforce, and so that's something I think is a very clear next step, is looking at some of these historic agreements to figure out if there are oversight and things that we could do to prevent things like this from happening again. But to that point, I think we have certainly over time strengthened LDAs to make sure that things like this don't happen again in the future. But I think oversight, looking at our past agreements, and then also ensuring that there are enforcement mechanisms in place into the ones built into the future is very important. And I think that's the next step to prevent this from happening into the future.
This started as a $150,000 unit. It's now worth 10 times that. And I'm curious as to who has actually gained profits from these years of transactions.
So in terms of the profits that have basically been gained, so the majority of the units that we currently have ongoing in Laconia Lofts, there was, after this particular project was defined, our legal department did a full evaluation of all the units there to ensure that those that do have the LDAs in place are going to be maintained, and make sure that those units will continue to be enforced on that front. In terms of the profits that will be made from this initial sale here, this money will be going directly towards the benefit of the artist community as a whole on that particular front. I'm not sure if I'm directly answering your question, Dr. Landsmark, that you directly posed, but the funding there will be made specifically to invest into the affordability for the artist community going forward on that particular point.
Well, I'm not entirely sure you've answered the question, but I think you've given the best answer that's available. I think the world needs to understand that these are the kinds of questions we're asking. And our own internal processes, as we improve them, have to focus on outcomes. Who is ultimately benefiting from the work that we do? And particularly when it comes to affordable units and affordable units for artists, inevitably we have to take a really hard look at how our own procedures and the marketplace ended up in a situation where we're removing an affordable unit units from the market, and hopefully they will lead to benefit more artists into the future.
And I'm not totally convinced that we have really found the root cause here, and that's not for us to find here on this meeting. So what I would like and what I'm requesting is to, after you've kind of completed your analysis of, okay, how did this happen and how can we prevent it in the future, that it be reported back to this board of the additional measures that we have taken and we plan to take to have some better oversight. This is, I think we understand this is it's on the agenda, so it is a vote that we will take, but not one that I personally am thrilled about taking. So, any additional questions or comments from the board? Hearing and seeing none, a motion is in order.
So moved.
Second?
Roll call for a vote. Mr. Monahan?
Aye.
Dr. Lansmore?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Motion passes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good job. Okay. Item number 15, request authorization to issue a certification of approval in accordance with Article 80E Small Project Review of the Zoning Code for the construction of 24 residential units, including 4 IDP units, 18 parking spaces, and 24 interior resident bike spaces, and 5 exterior visitor bike spaces located at 1153 Washington Street, to recommend approval to the Board of Appeal for the necessary zoning relief and to take all related actions. Stephen.
Good evening, and thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board, Madam Secretary, and Director Jameson. My name is Stephen Harvey, and I'm a project manager at the Bpda, and I want to thank you for your time today. The project I bring before you today is 1153 Washington Street, located in the Lower Mills section of Dorchester. On April 1st, 2022, the Boston Planning and Development Agency received a small project review application from the proponent. The proponent proposed to construct a new 4-story mixed-use development on a 12,101 square foot parcel. Currently, a single-story commercial building exists on the project site. The existing single-story structure will be demolished for this proposal. The new mixed-use development will contain 24 rental units, a 1,655 square foot ground floor commercial space, 18 parking spaces, and 24 bicycle parking spaces. If approved, the proposal would add 4 affordable units to the city's affordable unit housing stock. I held a virtual public meeting for the project. The meeting was well attended and the project was well received. The virtual public meeting was advertised in local papers and via email. The comment period for this project ended on May 20th, 2022. I would now like to turn it over to Assistant Deputy Director of Downtown and Neighborhood Planning, Kathleen Onifer, to touch on the planning context for the area. Once Kathleen runs through the planning context slides, the project architect, Michael Delavev, will present the project proposal. George Moranci, the project attorney, is also in attendance. Once the presentation is completed, Mike, George, and I will answer any questions put forward by the board. Thank you again for your time today.
Stephen. Good afternoon, Chair Rojas, Secretary Polhemus, and members of the board. Planning staff's review of this project was informed by our work on the currently underway Plan Mattapan, which included significant study of the Morton Street and River Street corridors that come, to a head at Washington Street just outside this project site. This plan that we're working on an internal draft of has recommended through the public process that these corridors be a location for mixed use and mid-rise development near transit and other amenities. And that redevelopment be an opportunity to introduce new open spaces and streetscape improvements to create a more comfortable walking environment and address the effects of the heat island effect on these major corridors. This site the project is proposed at is near many significant amenities, including bus transit service to Mattapan Square, the Ashmont MBTA station, and regional routes to Brockton, as well as neighboring a grocery store. During review of this project, planning staff focused on improving the safety of vehicle access to the site at this major intersection and corridor, securing multimodal improvements, including bicycle parking and streetscape improvements to achieve the multimodal goals of our planning, securing an increased number of inclusionary development units beyond the requirements of the existing inclusionary development policy, and having those units reflect the goals of affirmatively furthering fair housing priorities for the site, including larger units with more bedrooms to serve families, even though as a small project review, this is a voluntary effort. Want to commend them for their work there. As well as design review to provide design features that create usable open space and character befitting a multifamily residential building, including providing a design for an all brick building that reflects the strong historic context of mid-rise brick buildings like the nearby Baker Chocolate Factory campus. I'll now turn it over to the project proponent.
Thanks very much. I'm Mike Delafave. I'm an associate with Rotary Architects on the South End. here to present the project for you. As they mentioned, the site is located at the base of Dorchester Avenue, right in Lower Mills, on Washington Street and River Street. Next slide, please. Here you can see the site as it is today, with a collection of large curb cuts and the Star Market building behind our site. Next slide, please. So here's a couple of aerial views of the property. You can see that the Star Market is just to our right-hand side, and the Baker Chocolate Lofts behind us, as well as the Neponset River in the distance. Next slide, please. We're really excited to present this project with a lot of public realm upgrades. So there are 2 large curb cuts that are currently on the site. We intend to close those off and provide one single 10-foot curb cut leading to surface parking behind a commercial space. This is also a pretty busy intersection at the corner of River and Washington Street, and what we've chosen to do is create a right in and right out only traffic condition for the parking, as well as increasing the public realm with a 10-foot sidewalk, and also adding more open space in front of the lobby, which is at the corner of River and Washington Street, to allow for safer pedestrian crossing. Next slide, please. So we're really excited to be able to sort of knit the project into the existing context. So you can see here, this is our building in front, and we're very excited that a 4-story building that sort of fits seamlessly into its context using rich materials, brick, and metal. Next slide, please. This is a rendering of the building from the corner of River and Washington Street, and you can see the main residential entry there on the corner, as well as some deep brick profiles, a strong cornice, metal work, large windows, some vegetation and new trees along the street front, as well as a collection of pilasters, and then that open space on the lower right-hand corner. Next slide, please. Some more views of the project. The upper right-hand corner is across the street. The upper left-hand corner is a view from River Street, right next to the Star Market loading dock. We're excited to be able to transfer a lot of that materiality around the corner and address that facade. The lower left-hand corner is also the view up Washington Street, which you'll see from the corner of Dorchester Avenue. And then the final image there is from the rear parking. Those are balconies that look out over the Neponset River. Next slide, please. And again, this is the final elevation. And of course, happy to answer any questions that you may have.
I have some questions. So can we go over the, one more time, the affordability component here? Is there an affordability component to this?
Yeah, there's 4 affordable units we're providing.
Okay, 4 affordable out of the 24. Okay.
Yep.
All right. Additional questions or comments from the board?
Just to say, I really like the look of this project, and what a great contrast to what's there on the existing site. So I'm pleased.
Yeah, I'm pleased about the design too. So that's my Star Market. That's my grocery store. So so this is in my neighborhood. I am pleased. I wrote down the taking out those curb cuts, and it's a crazy intersection, and the right in, right out. Definitely looking forward to, or just thinking that those are the solutions that that area needs. So, great. Any questions or comments from the board? Hearing it, seeing none, a motion is in order.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call for vote. Mr. Monahan?
Aye.
Dr. Landsmark?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye, motion passes. Thank you. Beautiful building.
Thank you.
Okay, item number 16, request authorization to issue a certification of approval in accordance with Article 80E Small Project Review of the zoning code for the construction of 19 home ownership units, including 4 IDP units, 17 parking spaces, and 31 resident interior bicycle spaces, and 4 outdoor visitor parking spaces located at 4011 through 4019 Washington Street, and to take all related actions. We have Tyler from development team and Karen from planning.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the board. The proposal before you is an Article 80 small project at 4011 4019 Washington Street in the Rosendale neighborhood. The proposed project consists of a new 4-story mixed-use building. The building will contain the ground floor with 19 residential condo units, 17 surface parking spaces, bike storage, and the project will also deliver 21% of the proposed residential units at between 80 to 100 AMI. Furthermore, the Bpda held 3 public meetings for this project on August of 2021, March of 2022, and June of 2022. These 3 meetings were well attended and advertised in the local newspaper. Now, I will turn it over to Karen Chavez from the Bpda planning context before Matt Frankie and Ron Gold from the development team begin the presentation. Lastly, I want to say thank you to the members, public elected officials, and city agencies who helped review the proposed 4011-4019 Washington Street Rosendale project. Thank you.
Good evening, Chair Rojas, Secretary Polimas, and members of the board. My name is Karen Chavez, and I'm covering for Jared Staley, the neighborhood planner for Rosendale. The proposed project is within the boundaries of the Rosendale Neighborhood Strategic Plan, which was adopted in 2007, and outlines that project should provide a wide range of housing options for new and existing residents and provide improved transportation options. Next slide, please. The proposed project meets the spirit of the Rosendale planning document with increased density along a primary corridor, increased housing options, and a proposed commercial space. Given the elapsed time of this planning initiative, the planning staff also referred to more recent citywide plans, such as Imagine Boston 2030 and Go Boston 2030, and considered community conversations and the existing neighborhood context. Thank you, and I will now turn it over to the development team to present the project in more detail.
Someone might be on mute, or we're not hearing anything yet. Like we might have some.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes.
Yes, good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the board. I'll try to be very brief because I know you have an agenda and time is short. I'm Ron Gold. I'm the proponent of the project located at 4011 to 4019 Washington Street. This application, as you know, is for 19 residential units. These are for sale units. These are and a ground floor retail space. We have on-site parking. And I want to express my gratitude to all members of the board for the time and effort involved. And I'd also like to acknowledge Tyler Ross, as well as the entire staff, for their expert guidance and pragmatic advice during this whole process. Our hope is to develop this building, and we've called the project the Benjamin in honor of our deceased father, who was born in Boston. He worked out of this exact location for approximately 50 years as a plumbing, heating, and building contractor. Now I am the youngest at 65 of the siblings. There's 4 of us, and given our advanced ages, hate to admit it, but true, we feel like now is the time that we could do something that's more long-lasting and productive for this piece of property. Not just for us, but for the Rosendale community. And based on that, we've had 3 public Zoom meetings. During these meetings, we've kept our ears, our minds, and our hearts open to all of the local residents. And we listen to their suggestions and comments. We have some letters of support in the file. I know we probably have some detractors in that file also. And we recognize we can't please everyone. But I feel that this endeavor goes a long way to meet or exceed community expectations. And we are providing a series of community benefits. A green roof, which helps to reduce our greenhouse gas effect. carbon footprint reduction. It also enables the roof to last 2 to 3 times a conventional roof that you would have in a building like this, which doesn't seem like much right now, but it also reduces the amount of manufacturing required to make replacement roofing materials, et cetera. We're providing 31 at-grade bike storage spaces. We are making a donation to the Parks Department of approximately $18,000. We're making a $5,760 donation to Blue Bikes. And we're also doing more than the required IDP units at 21%. We feel that everybody in the city of Boston deserves a chance at more affordable home ownership. And with this project, we hope that we provide a reasonable housing alternative for people of all ages and income levels. And overall, I think that we've come reasonably close to doing that with this building. We're trying to do something that's right for the times, but also have a building that looks towards the future. And I feel that Matt Franke, the project architect, has designed just such a building. I think that it's timeless in its way, and it also addresses specific issues with housing in the city of Boston that we're currently all facing. And with that, I'd like to turn the proposal over to Matt. And obviously, if there's any specific questions, I'm more than happy to answer as they come up. Thank you.
Thanks, Ron. That was great. You took a lot of the heavy lifting off my presentation. My name's Matt Franke. I'm with MGFA. I'm the architect of record. The slide you're looking at is showing Washington Street diagonally upper left to lower right. And you can see the black arrow pointing to the one-story structure that is existing currently. Ron did, so I won't reiterate. But we are proposing a 4-story structure at 43.5 feet with an FAR of 2.63. The rest of the items Ron covered. Next slide, please. This is a diagram. You can see the project site arrow as we're quite zoomed out, but there is a plethora of bike routes, zip cars, Blue Bikes, the Forest Hills T, and commuter rail, all within this this map. Next slide, please. So this is Washington Street looking south, the black arrow pointing to the one-story structure that Ron spoke about. That's been in his family for a very long time, but would be raised as part of this proposal. Next slide. Thank you. This is a model of the immediate context with the upper left image being the one-story structure again that we're proposing and the surrounding context. So, you know, there's a Domino's, a Hertz, some 3 families across the street, and next door there's a one-story structure with a nail salon, hair salon, and the Arboretum Grill, which is a restaurant. Next slide, please. This is the planning context slide that was presented by the Bpda. Sorry, I can't remember your name. Forgive me. Next slide, please. This is a site plan where the first floor we're proposing to have 17 parking spaces that are accessed off of Lesher Street. They are mostly covered. You can see by the dashed line that some of the parking spaces at the top there, you know, maybe their hoods might get a little snow or rain, but most of the parking is covered by the building above. The other programmatic units of the first floor would be the residential lobby, you know, obviously vertical circulation, trash room. We have a indoor room accessed off of Washington Street for 31 bikes, which is well up and above what is required, and a tenant space. It's actually a duplex tenant space, meaning that there's space in the basement. I believe the total tenant space is around 2,000 square feet. But that completes the first floor. Above the second, third, and fourth floor are 19 residential units, 4 of those being IDP. We have a unit mix of 2 studios, 13 one-bedrooms, and 4 two-bedrooms. Again, 4 of those would be IDP. Next slide, please. At the top of the screen is a flat-on elevation off of Washington Street, and below that is a street wall elevation showing the neighboring context. Thank you. And this would be a view, perspective view from the corner of Lesher Street, which would be off to your right, and Washington Street fading off to your left. The residential lobby is right on the corner where those 3 people are standing, and the retail would be accessed off of Washington Street. We are proposing 3 new trees. There are 2 existing, and we would propose to add 3 more. The 4th floor, from a design perspective, we've stepped it back off of Washington Street and Lesher Street, and also, in an attempt to kind of erode the corners so as to make the 4 stories feel less significant off of Washington and Lesher Street. There would be private decks. There's no public deck. As Ron mentioned, we do have a green roof, but it is an unoccupied green roof. So there will not be any parties or anything going on up there. It is unoccupied, but still provides the benefits of having a green roof and heat island effect and all the other benefits that come along with that. I believe, yep, so that's the last slide. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you. Do we have any questions or comments from the board? All right, hearing and seeing none, a motion is in order.
So moved.
Second?
Okay, roll call for a vote. Mr. Monahan?
Aye.
Dr. Landsmark?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Motion passes. Looks good. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Good evening.
Okay, item number 17 has been removed. Moving on to item number 18, request authorization to enter into an amended and restated affordable housing agreement for off-site units in connection with the development located at 1550 Soldiers Field Road and 21 Soldiers Field Place. Michelle.
Hello, and thank you, Chairwoman Rojas, Secretary Polhemus, Director Jemison, and members of the board. I'm Michelle McCarthy, Housing Policy Manager, here before you today with an update to the Inclusionary Development Policy Program at the previously approved 1550 Soldiers Field Road and 21 Soldiers Field Place project. On May 17, 2018, this board approved off-site IDP units for the 1550 Soldiers Field Road project to be located entirely at 21 Soldiers Field Place. At that time, the IDP units were to consist of 38 residential condo units consisting of 4 studios, 24 one-bedrooms, 2 8-bedrooms, and 2 3-bedrooms. In March of this year, the development team informed the Bpda that although the overall unit count of 38 condo units would remain the same, the studio units would be eliminated. Now the proposed configuration of IDP units at the 21 Soldiers Field Place site is 26 one-beds, 10 two-beds, and 2 3-beds. No other changes to either the 1550 Soldiers Field Road or 21 Soldiers Field Place project are proposed at this time. Your vote today is to authorize the execution of an amended and restated affordable housing agreement for off-site IDP units at the 21 Soldiers Field Place site. Thank you for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from the board?
Why is this change being proposed?
Is Jay Walsh on? I saw that he was a participant. I'm not, or on the panel, on the attendee list. I'm not sure if he can be promoted. I should have asked for that in advance. I'm out of practice with this presentations.
I just promoted him, Michelle.
Thank you. Jay, if you're on and can answer that question.
I am, and I'm muted. By act, I muted myself. I apologize. Bob Simons from the development team is on, who has can explain this issue in detail.
And is he promoted?
I don't, Jay, what is his name?
Robert Simons.
Yeah, I didn't see his name, which is...
I don't see it, no. He's not on.
Well, is there someone here who can explain this change?
Let's give us a second here. Let's see.
It looked like Jay maybe was going to try and call him. We could potentially...
Do you want me to come back?
Yeah, maybe we should come back.
Okay, so we're gonna hold the vote on this. Give you a couple seconds to get the right people on the call and promoted and all of that. So we'll be right back on this one.
Sorry for the confusion.
Yeah, no worries, no worries. Okay, so the next two items are our public hearings, so we're gonna skip over those and move on to item number 21. Request authorization to enter into a memorandum of agreement with the City of Boston Mayor's Office of Arts and Culture to facilitate the transfer of mitigation funds for public arts improvements associated with Boston Redevelopment Authority approved Article 80 projects. Tia.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members.
Oh, they wrote Tia, I'm sorry.
Tammy does that. Not a problem at all. Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board, Madam Secretary, and Director Jemison. My name is Ty Lim, Bpda Senior Development Finance Manager. As mentioned in the summary, the staff is seeking board's approval to enter into subsequent memorandums of agreement with the City of Boston Mayor's Office of Arts and Culture. This authorization would facilitate the transfer of mitigation funds associated with the Article 80 projects approved by the Bpda for use in arts and culture efforts. The purpose is to establish a standing MOA to provide for the transfer of such funds expeditiously through subsequent MOAs so that the arts and culture efforts can be completed without unnecessary delay and/or contracts. Bpda staff will work with the Mayor's Office of Arts and Culture, Treasury, and the City of Boston Corporation Council to create subsequent MOAs to facilitate such transfers going forward. For your information, the board has approved to enter into similar MOAs with the Boston Transportation Department and Public Works Department back in 2018, which resulted in streamlining numerous fund transfers which have been agreed upon and memorialized during the Article 80 processes. That concludes the remark. Thank you, and I'm more than happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Great, thank you, Ty. Any questions or comments from the board?
If we vote to approve this, does this mean that we are, as a board, giving up our oversight of these fund transfers to artistic endeavors?
Dr. Landsberg, that's actually a great question. So these subsequent MOAs will be drafted and finalized based on the, what actually resulted from the Article 80 processes and, the mitigations and public benefits, so on and so forth. And will be memorialized in the cooperation agreement. So what this does is, instead of going back to the board on every project, this actually kind of enables us to enter into like each memorandum memorandum of agreement on project basis. So, so the board will already have been voted to approve the mitigations during the Article 80 processes. I hope that answered your question.
But we won't know what the specific art investments are. Is that correct?
Those will be in the cooperation agreement.
And is there evidence that this board has delayed in any way the transfer of funds to these artists and arts organizations? I'm asking because a number of us are directly interested in what we're doing to support art and culture, and it sounds as though we are now about to vote to give up our awareness, really, of what the specific arts investments are going to be. And in some cases, those investments involve landscape improvements and other things that are beneficial to the arts. And I know that in several instances, we have in the past supported artistic development in the city that other organizations might not have.
So Dr. Landsmark, you would still in each Article 80 board memo be approving where the benefits money went to in terms of arts organizations. This is literally a ministerial transfer of the funds from the agency to the city, and we want to do it this way so that we don't have to create a separate MOA with the city that then has to go to the city council for approval. This is a blanket. This is a one-time, and it's just as a way of transferring money. It doesn't have to do with where the funds are going to.
Okay, so this would fall into when I read the agenda item, the all related actions.
Correct.
Type thing to be able to kind of facilitate what we already approved. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
So during the Article 80, and the memorandum agreement will reflect the exact language of the cooperation agreement, which memorializes all the public benefits from that particular project.
And the language in the cooperation agreement comes from what is in the board memo, which you will have reviewed prior to board approval.
Okay. So our oversight, and Dr. Landsmark, I think our oversight remains. Is my understanding. Are you comfortable with that? Does that make sense?
Maybe.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd say it wasn't clear. The initial piece was not clear to me. So, Teresa, as you clarify, we'd still see where the arts and culture funds are designated, but from that point forward, if we vote on it, it's approved, it's more an accounting transaction that's simpler. Is that fair to say?
That is correct, Mr. Miller.
Okay, I raised the question not because I am thinking about any alike. I mean, however the determinations of recipients is made is fine. But what strikes me is that this agency over the years has exercised the leverage that we have with developers to incentivize them to make commitments to invest in the arts. And I recognize that there may be some expeditious steps that can be taken through the passage of this MOA, but I am not yet persuaded that the making those decisions have the same leverage with developers that we do. And so my concern is that developers may not make the kinds of investments they've been willing to make up to now. I might be wrong, but I would like some sense of assurance that developers will still be persuaded to make the kinds of arts investments that we want to see made.
So, Dr. Landsmark, as I understand, the negotiations that happen between our agency and developers as we're moving towards an Article 80 board hearing would still continue, and the agreements that the projects come to would already happen before we'd be in a position to be transferring money to the Mayor's Office of Arts and Culture. That work would already have happened and would already be agreed to before we'd ever be in a position to transfer the money to arts and culture. It's very similar to let's say Bpda, when you'll see in a board in the community benefits or mitigation sections of your board memo, and there's $10,000 or $20,000 to help with an intersection design or construction on an intersection. That's approved in a board memo, and then the money at whatever time that the developer is required to make that contribution, the money comes into the agency here, and then it needs to go to Public Works. We have a similar standing memorandum of agreement with the city, such that the money comes from us to the city with not having to do a separate MOA and an accept and expend with the city council. This vote is asking for the ability to handle any contributions going directly to the Mayor's Office of Arts and Culture in a similar way. Those commitments by the developers are already established before the board meeting, and they are laid out into your board memo. This is an after the fact ministerial task.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Additional questions or comments?
I'd like to add, Dr. Landsmark, I appreciate your insights here, and if this is something other board members would rather have a little bit of time to digest, I mean, it seems to have been working well for a long time. Is this something we might have on the next agenda?
I would welcome that shift. I think we just need to take a bit of a longer look. Frankly, I'm not aware that the current process has in any way delayed the delivery of funds to arts organizations, and that would be the last thing I would want to see happen. And I may be just thinking more historically than I need to, but I know that this agency has been able to exercise considerable authority in our negotiations with developers around supporting the arts. And I'm not sure that this transfer of authority strengthens that. I understand it may make it faster, but I'm not aware of any delays that have taken place in the past.
Okay, I think that's I think that's fine. In that this this feels like we have some open questions, and I think given that I think we're all a little protective, right? Especially given earlier in the agenda item that we had an arts and culture unit get taken off, and so Secretary Polhemus, are there any significant negative impacts that would happen if we were to table this to the next meeting? would we be able to kind of do a little bit of business as usual for another month or so while, we get additional assurance, or are there other deadlines we're not aware of?
So we can certainly table this to another moment. There is one transfer that we're waiting to make to the mayor's office, but we can hold on that for a month.
Okay, I mean, if it's urgent, I would just soon make that transfer, but still consider the implications of what we're about to vote on. But if it's not urgent, then I would move that we defer this vote until our next meeting.
Okay, is there, there's a motion on the table. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. All right, roll call for a vote. Mr. Monahan?
Aye.
Dr. Landsmark?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Aye, and the chair votes aye. Motion passes. So we were going to table this item into the next meeting, and we can have the necessary follow-up questions in the meantime and incorporate that into the presentation at the next meeting. So thank you all. We are now going to go back to item number 18. So I'm just going to read it again. Request authorization to enter into an amended and restated affordable housing agreement for off-site units in connection with the development located at 1550 Soldiers Field Road and 21 Soldiers Field Place. Michelle.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Would you like me to read my remarks again?
No. I don't think you have to read it again. I think let's just go ahead and go back to the question of that Dr. Landsmark had of what I believe is what is driving this change, or.
Great, and I believe Mr. Simons is on right now. If you can unmute yourself and answer Dr. Landsmark's question. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you. My name is Bob Simons from SMC Management. We purchased this property from Dinosaur Capital, who was the original developer that negotiated the affordable agreement. While Icon was finishing the design of the building, the exhibit that listed the number of bedrooms and the units for the IDP units was developed. Unfortunately, when they signed the agreement, Icon had not finished the design of the building, and they enhanced the design by changing 4 of the studio units into 1 bedrooms and 2 of the 1 bedrooms into 2 bedrooms. So without changing the unit number, they increased the number of bedrooms by 4 1-bedrooms from studios and 2 2-bedrooms from 1-bedrooms. Other than that, we've cleaned up the square footages in the Exhibit C, and that was really the extent of the change. It was just a timing of the creation of the Exhibit C and the signature on the agreement.
Can we go back to, okay, so maybe we do have to go back and review the actual change again. I'm curious to know what is the impact of this change, and make sure that we're not in a less advantageous state from a public perspective with regard to affordable housing.
Sure. So the 4 studio units have been eliminated, and in exchange, the number of 1-beds has increased from 24 to 26, and the number of 2-bedrooms has increased from 8 to 10, and the number of 3s has stayed the same.
But how is that affecting the number of affordable units?
The total number remains the same. 38 were originally approved, and 38 remain.
Is it the makeup that changes then? So now the units are bigger?
2 of the units are bigger. So there's two additional 1-beds and 2 additional 2-beds. So I don't know, Mr. Simons, if you can say more about the impacts and the distribution of the changes.
Yeah, I don't believe that the layout of the actual unit walls or overall size of each unit changed, but they recognized that like the 2 1-beds that became 2 beds are 834, 840 square feet each, as opposed to what was originally anticipated that they would be 612 feet in the preliminary design. And same thing with the studios. When the preliminary design was done, they thought those spaces were 462 and they're actually 658. So the space was larger and accommodated the shift in the number of bedroom units and made them a little bit nicer units. So I think that's what happened. Icon was finalizing that design.
Okay, so what you're saying is that the unit mix of affordable units is different, but the total number of affordable units remains the same.
That is correct, Dr. Landsmark.
Thank you.
Okay. Sorry, I think I'm gonna have to, this is confusing me. So I'm trying to understand, like, okay, so I know that the mix changed, but from I guess, which units are going to be affordable? Like, what is the before and after picture, right? Was it like, because we usually kind of designate which ones are going to be affordable, like, a studio, a 1-bedroom, a 2-bedroom, and then so I'm just trying to get the before and after picture of the 4 affordable units.
The actual, all 38 units are in a standalone building from the 1550 project. So all of the affordable units are still within the same building, and the building configuration, outside configuration, has not changed. And maybe I can help by changing my background just for a quick second. So,
yeah, that's not really my question.
Oh,
though,
I'm sorry.
Sorry, my question is, what was the before picture of the affordable units, right? So what was the makeup of those, right? The mix of like studio, 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom. So what was that before? And then what is that now? Like, I just care about the affordable units.
Sure, so it's all 38 units in the 21 Soldiers Field Place. So it's all 4 studios, original composition was all 4 studios, all 4 24 1-beds, all 24 1-beds, all 8 2-beds, and all 2 3-beds. So under the new configuration, they're all affordable. So this was the offsite contribution. 21 Soldiers Field Place is the offsite contribution for the 1550 Soldiers Field Road project. So all 38 are affordable. So it's not as if we're losing a certain number of affordable studios in exchange for now a market rate larger unit or anything like that. That they're all remain affordable, all 38.
Got it. Did the affordability, like the AMI thresholds change at all? Of like the affordability of the units, like did that change at all?
Nope, just the configuration.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That clarifies it. Thank you.
Okay. Great. Any other questions or comments from the board? Okay, hearing and seeing none, a motion is in order.
So moved.
Second.
We'll call for a vote. Mr. Monahan?
Aye.
Dr. Landsmark?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Motion passes. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. So let's.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you. We've got 5 more minutes. Or actually, no, the first one starts at 5:40. So let's go ahead to item number 22, contractual. I need a motion to pay the bills.
I move that we pay our bills.
Second.
Roll call for a vote. Mr. Monahan?
Aye.
Dr. Landsmark?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Motion passes. Please pay the bills. And item number 23, personnel. Michael.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board, Madam Secretary, and Director Jemison. We have a few items for your consideration on the BRA agenda. We have 5 status changes with the details specific to those changes listed in the board memos. And that is all we have for me. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from the board? Hearing and seeing none, a motion is in order.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call for a vote. Mr. Monahan?
Aye.
Dr. Landsmark?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Motion passes. Okay. So, correct me if I'm wrong, Secretary Polhemus, but our first public hearing starts at 5:40. So we should take a recess till then, right?
Correct, we should take a break. Yep.
Awesome. So we are going to take a break and we'll resume back at 5:40 and start the public hearing portion of our agenda. Thank you very much.